Hey kids, deep fried neurons here. The last one didn't work as well. So I'm gonna discard this one as well because I didn't like it at all. But I'm gonna tell you that this episode is not my favorite. It's a little rambly because I didn't write this one, the last one I did. So that's that. I'm gonna cue the fucking. Surviving the quarantine has been a bittersweet experience because I am getting a lot of things done that I thought I would when I'm at home. For example, I've finally cleaned my entire house on my own terms, not telling somebody to do so. I cooked for myself more than once in a day. I am working out, finally making time for that, and reading books, playing games that I always said I would play, studying the things I said I would study, and putting out this content which I promised myself I would do at least, 4 times a month. And that's something that this quarantine has helped me with. But at the same time, another thing that it helps me do is procrastinate and fall down a rabbit hole of YouTube videos like I am 13 again. Yeah, I used to do this when I was 13 for some reason. I don't ask me why. There was a lot of Fine Brothers involved as well. I'm not very proud. So when it comes to falling down a rabbit hole, one of my favorite ones that I fell down recently, I recorded the time on it, was 2 hours 30 minutes of just fail compilations. People trying to do something and not being successful at those things is exactly what I watched. And I enjoyed doing that quite a lot and laughed out loud for most of them. Then there was Robert Wield compilations, like directed by Robert Wield, which is like the Curb Your Enthusiasm theme compilations, and To Be Continued compilations were in that mix. It just made me think about what is this very particular emotion I'm feeling. And I know I've been stalling so far, and you can read the title, but at the same time, I had to get there because it sounds more groovy. Why did I just say groovy? Dear God, what is wrong with me? It has been a strange couple of days. So, the emotion I've been feeling, I found out by a quick Google search, was Schadenfreude. Schadenfreude quite literally means experiencing pleasure at the pain of other people. It's a term that comes from the German language, Schaden, which is a word that means harm, and Freude, which means joy. And for some reason, I'm genuinely pissed off at the fact that Freude means joy, because that name very rarely makes people feel joy. Most commonly, I've heard Freude as a word to inspire horniness, embarrassment, and discomfort at the same time. It's a very weird sense. Is this joke overdone? Probably is. Anyway, so Schadenfreude is experiencing pleasure at other people's pain. And I was like, that is so peculiar. I learned that you're supposed to experience pain looking at other people's pain so that you can avoid that behavior or that situation for yourself. Empathy. It makes sense when you think of it in a evolutionary or Darwinist frame of thought. But then there's this completely opposite manifestation of the same principle where you see somebody experience pain and you derive joy out of it. Now, of course, Schadenfreude is not a new emotion that has come with fail compilations on YouTube. It has the same principle in life, like in actual fictional situations, as it did in slapstick comedy that used to be popular with Charlie Chaplin or even before him, or slapstick comedy elements that were in Shakespearean or even primal theater. It is as old as laughter. And when it comes to a psychological analysis of what it means to feel Schadenfreude, it usually boils down to two words that you will see being used in tandem with Schadenfreude: identity and esteem. Now, most researchers claim, or at least Wikipedia claims, along with a few researchers, that lower self-esteem is, it's tied with, or it goes in tandem with a higher sense of Schadenfreude, or more experiences of Schadenfreude, and higher self-esteem with lower instances of Schadenfreude, which I do not believe is equally true. I've seen highly esteemed sociopaths as well. Just saying. it's it's not necessarily true, but probably is a trend. I don't know. The numbers on those studies seem to say that it's a regular thing, but it boils down to a much simpler word in that sense, which is competition. Now, it is not. I don't think it's a secret for any functioning adult that competition is quite inevitable in a natural setting. And the reason we created society is so that we have to compete less as a species. Like, all of us don't have to compete with each other. We can just compete with everybody outside this species for resources, and we can share the resources that we have. Take along the people who are, who have a different skill set than the others. That's how, at least evolutionary, it worked. That's why society came together and the social contract was formed. But at the same time, just because it was created with that spirit doesn't mean competition within society was gone. Now, when I say that it is rolled with lower people with lower self-esteem, the reason I say that is because the most common way you experience Schadenfreude is that you see somebody experience pain, more often than not pain that is well deserved or brought upon themselves, and then you laugh at that because the operative emotion there being that you're better than that person, that you wouldn't do something that stupid or you wouldn't be in that situation at all. And sitcoms sort of function on that dynamic. So I did minor research on it, and I found out that there's three major types of Schadenfreude, which is aggression based, group based, and justice based Schadenfreude. So aggression based is much more individualistic. It's basically seeing somebody you don't like particularly as a person, like somebody you constantly are in rivalry with, and seeing them make a mistake and rooting for them to make a mistake, being petty about it even, and then experiencing joy over their failure because they went the other way as you did. Now, the competition based ones or in group based ones are a little bigger sense of the same thing. Like, for example, sports teams. There's a reason why Barcelona and Real Madrid laugh at each other's mistakes if one of those teams make a big mistake in their game. For example, Barcelona spends a lot of time coming up with at least Barcelona fans I know in India spend a lot of time finding creative insults for Madrid fans. A friend of mine used to say, like, because Real Madrid fans say "Hala Madrid" as one of the chants for their team, and it has been made into "Hila Madrid" over group chats where football is being discussed, and it's very entertaining to watch. Is all I'll say. But that's sort of in group, because you don't identify with a group, and that's a group that is consistently in competition with your group. Their pain means your gain, and hence it sparks Schadenfreude. And the third one is justice deserving, and this is very simple. I don't think I have to explain it much. All of you have seen the instant karma compilations on YouTube. That's basically it. Somebody violates a certain law or a protocol that is, basic logic. Their actions are well defined by arrogance, and hence the pain that they suffer is well deserved in a certain sense, and hence you don't feel bad about laughing at them. For example, a lot of people laughed when that basketball player, I forget his name for the life of me, I couldn't remember. He made fun of the virus being spread, and he touched the microphones before he left, and right after he left that meeting, he got tested with coronavirus. Like, he got tested and he tested positive for the coronavirus, and oof. So that's how operatively it works. And mostly I thought it was interesting how you so unintentionally protect your esteem, and you feel the way you feel without wanting to feel that way, and find justifications for that feeling throughout your behavior or your interactions in society. Now, one of the things that I learned in my psychology class when I was doing my BA is that if your cognition follows your emotion and you use your cognitive abilities to justify the way you feel, that usually means a sign of unhealthy behavior. For example, in case of mood disorders, especially depression, is that you feel a certain way, and then that feeling starts dictating how you will think. Most people don't have a control over it, which is why it's called a disorder, and hence all of this therapy needs to happen, where your thought needs to be systematically broken down and your worldview needs to be reconstructed towards moderation and not extremes. And hence, Schadenfreude operates sort of the same way. Now, this is the lecture part of the podcast, and here's where my theory started prompting. For a very long time, Schadenfreude as an emotion was shunned upon, and it was something that people expressed in private parties in groups that they trust. That's how classism sort of bred in earlier societies. Not to say that it has completely gone away, but it was one of the signs that you were laughing at another class. For example, cultured individuals of Britain who were laughing at, say, rich businessmen of Mumbai after they went back home. It's sort of also Schadenfreude, but with a taste of culturalism, with a taste of classism in it. But that's not the point I'm getting at. Nothing that evil so far. But it was something, if you were engaging in Schadenfreude in public, that was discouraged until Twitter came along. If you don't know, one of the reasons why YouTube Rewind 2018 failed and then 2019 failed is because, well, 2019 not as big as a failure as 2018, to be honest, is because it failed to capture the essence of the community. And by 2018, it had completely consumed itself in drama and people trying to take each other down for the mistakes they've made in the past. One of the great things about the internet is it's an eternal record of everything. So if you are not being honest about something, the internet will find it and it will come back to haunt you. And it has its advantages, it has its disadvantages. One of them is that you will never be forgotten. And I'm sort of trying to psychologically adjust myself to not want the right to be forgotten. Like, if I'm recorded throughout for the person I am, I should still be a decent person, is what I'm trying to think. But that's also extremely invasive on my privacy. So it's a battle for me as well. But at the same time, the YouTube culture sort of has become a celebratory place for Schadenfreude. You see somebody fucking up, you laugh at the fact that they fucked up, and then you spread the fact that they fucked up. You make memes about it. For example, the entire Shane Dawson thing that happened. Everybody loves Shane Dawson still. He's one of the most successful YouTubers on the planet. But the entire cat incident that happened with him, people had no guilt poking fun at it. I mean, I didn't. Of course, I don't actually believe that he did it. Because, well, it's a little ridiculous, and it's from a time in his career which is especially cringy, and it was during my cringe years as well, so I understand his cringe. But nonetheless, I genuinely enjoyed the memes, and I believe that experiencing that sort of emotion and then honestly and publicly coming up with it with a tiny cloak of internet anonymity is very interesting, and it shows a very big shift in cultural paradigm. Twitter is a micro word, more condensed version of the same culture, but it speaks magnitudes, because media that has been archaic or has had an established monopoly of truth in the pragmatic, modern and postmodern world also reports on Twitter. YouTube not as much. YouTube is a bubble of its own sometimes. And I would like to see what happens further, but I hope it doesn't get toxic, because it can. For example, people laughing at other people's pain. The entire Demi Lovato and her heroin habit being ridiculed, like her heroin overdose being ridiculed. It wasn't particularly nice. Not to mention, Schadenfreude goes wrong in multiple ways, where people's disabilities get made fun of or shunned at, which is not kind of nice. The entire Leafy incident, if you guys remember who Leafy was. Remember Leafy? That was 4-5 years ago? God, I'm old. So that's all I had to say. Just make sure your Schadenfreude is not sociopathic, but at the same time, borderlines on sociopathic. And that's that. All I had to say. Like, share, subscribe, please, and support me on Patreon if you think the content is worth it. I'm gonna probably not publish any more episodes this week. I'm gonna work on some different projects. But more episodes coming soon. I mean, the month has only 7 days left, and I'm pretty sure I've finished my quota of 4 episodes. The next episode is very big for me because it's a number it is, and yeah, wash your hands and stay safe. See you guys.